Patty Lennon, I met you because of a mutual friend. Sight unseen, I booked you for my very first event when I had my very first event a couple of years ago, and where I was bringing people in, most of whom I knew, and you were the wild card. You really were. And so I was like, well, we'll just see. I mean, this mutual friend of ours, Jenny Powers, I just trust her inherently. And boy, did you deliver. I was blown away by you as a speaker, as an expert. I mean, you really were something, and people were talking about it for a long time. And so I was excited to help celebrate your new book, which is called Make Space for Magic, Learn to Receive Love, Abundance, and Support from the Universe. I'm going to make us define our terms here because I want to understand what you mean by magic. But first, I have to start with this. When you were little, you said in the book, oh, it was very clear what you were going to be when you grew up. And you, of course, were going to be a missionary.
I grew up very Irish Catholic, so my motivation was just the awareness that people didn't understand God loved them. That to me, to my little self, that was heartbreaking. Magic is really, it's sourced by the divine, right? And my terminology has changed around higher power. But today, the fact that people are walking across the street struggling with depression and parenting and may not understand that there's a divine being that has their back every single minute of every single day breaks my heart. And it is my mission to make sure they know the divine's there for them. I don't identify as Irish Catholic. And when I think about the divine, to me, it's whatever your mind, your paradigm of how you live believes in a higher power. We're all talking about the same thing. So magic is the space between what we can create in our human form and then what shows up. So when you have a big dream, there's an amount that you can do to make that big dream come to life, but there's always some space between what you were able to do and what actually showed up. From a very fundamental place, birth, like when someone births a child, like, yes, there's the act that creates it and we know the science, but that a human being comes into the world with a personality and an essence that goes far beyond the science, that space, that's magic. And I believe that magic is essentially the divine working in our lives.
And the allowing for that space means there's only so much we can do. We can't force things into being. But that space, if that space represents a lot of things, some people could see it as negative space. Some people think, well, there's nothing out there. It's a total void and the world's out to get me, which sees it as then it's literally anti-me or anti-life. Some people say it means nothing at all. But you're saying that space is what allows us to become something that we might not be able to do without its help.
When I talk, if I'm going to talk to an audience, let's say, and someone says like, who's your audience, or who do you need them to be, or, any of those questions, we get, I say they need to be woo curious.
Oh, woo curious. I love that.
So there does have to be an aspect of curiosity inside of someone. I do believe that people walk around without curiosity. You don't have to be full on woo. But if you're not a little bit curious, you aren't a little bit open, then yeah, you probably do believe it's all just matter and you don't think beyond that. And I probably won't ever be able to change your mind. But here's the reason I won't be able to change your mind. It's not because you're right. It's because your amygdala, the part of your brain that is the lowest performing part of the brain, the reptilian brain, has so much power over you that the piece that could actually allow in this understanding doesn't even get enough blood flow for that to happen. You can say to me, Patty, you have no proof you're right. And I will say 100%. I don't. That's what the magic is. That's the faith, right? When you leap, when a trapeze artist leaps from one trapeze bar to the next, the space between those two bars is a space of faith. Now, for a practiced trapeze artist, it's very low faith. They've done it so many times. They know what happens. They know that the propulsion carries them. But for someone letting go of the trapeze bar for the first time, that is one of the greatest acts of faith. To stay in the space of magic is very much easy for me at this point, or easier. for someone picking up the book for the first time or kind of hearing what I have to say for the first time, it will be a journey of tremendous trust, and curiosity is all you need.
What you're saying is it's based in a kind of skill. Skill is something that we gradually sharpen. It becomes more finely tuned as an instrument. And what you're saying is our ability to believe or understand or make use of this space between what we know and what we don't know is something we can get better at. It's not an on-off switch. Now, the big attention around how do we make things happen came years ago with the publication of a very famous book called The Secret, which is how I first learned about what the law of attraction was, which of course people have been talking about for years before that, but it popularized it. Talk about a little bit of the history of this idea before we go in and gut it, which we're also about to do.
What are the two favorite stories of the Bible? Jesus turning water into wine, and the best wine, and then the loaves and fishes, right? Where there was abundance, where there was nothing before, simply from faith. This is just for as long as we've been thinking humans, the law of attraction has existed. But like you said, the more we got into pop culture and things had to be faster and faster and faster, the more synthesized this work became. The Secret took very big spiritual process theory and took it and forced it through like the equivalent of Star Magazine or the Inquirer. Yeah. And there's something really sweet and beautiful, though, about the gift that book gave to everyone, which is it made it possible for people to understand that this existed. And many people didn't. Many people had no idea that simply desiring something could begin the process of it coming into your life, and that your effort wasn't always what was needed to have your life become what it is. The problem was what it didn't talk about is when we ask for something, it focused first of all on the heavy side of the process being the way we ask. So vision boards, visualization, right? The reality is you can ask, you just need to ask from a pure-hearted place. If you're a visual imaginer, like seeing things really change it for you, you feel it in a bigger way, vision boards are really important. If you're a right brain thinker, a creative thinker, visualization is really important. But if you're a linear thinker, if you're process driven, none of those are going to work for you where the law of attraction is, because that's not how your brain works. For a linear person, it would be making a list of what you want. That's enough. That is enough. The thing is, you ask, but then you're answered. The universe answers you, the divine answers you. And sometimes the answer is no, and sometimes the answer is not yet. And The Secret didn't account for that being true.
The point of using the tools is for the person to connect to the message. It's not because the God who will grant you the wish only understands one verb conjugation, one verb tense. The God only understands present tense. And if you're not a vision board person, you don't have to do a vision board. You might as well think you should put an apple pie at the foot of a volcano. I mean, that's not what this is. This is about what you teach, which is how do you get real clear and honest about what it is you want? And it doesn't mean you wish and it comes tomorrow. But also there's two parts of this. One is the rub of, oh, what about the people who got in a car accident? What about the people who lost someone in a car accident? What about people who got diagnoses that were terrible? Oh, well, you must have drawn it to you. You must have attracted it. It must be you, Lorraine. It must be your problem. Well, then all of a sudden now it's my fault. I'm a lousy, well, you call it a crap magnet, that I'm going to be drawing things to me. You can't have it both ways. Or can you, or you have to have it both ways? I don't know. What is your take on that?
First of all, that doesn't leave space for magic, right? Magic isn't a fairy godmother that grants every wish. Magic is a force that enables you to have the greatest version of your life defined by your soul's path, not your human ego. Where I did my clinical work when I got my master's in psychology was in a cancer support center.
Ooh.
And so I was learning all of this at the same time that I was supporting cancer patients, and it pissed me off because I knew they had not attracted this. You know, I knew that they had not manifested this. This is disgusting.
You chose this, right? It's so bad. If we believe that a single negative thought or emotion will draw horrible things to us, then what will we do? We'll bury it. We will suppress and repress those things and end up suffering from something else, which you talk about, called toxic positivity.
Yeah, I mean that's essentially the symptom of the spiritual and the personal development world, the teachers, the pop culture teaching that, you know, when you have a negative thought, where you need to meet that with is positive thought. When you have a negative experience, what you need to do is visualize something better or think something better, when in fact, grieving, feeling sad, processing emotions is how our brain is designed, and it's what is needed. But you have stuff going on and you think, oh, but it'll get better. Oh, let me visualize lollipops and unicorns or whatever the positive outcome is, right? And you shove those emotions down inside your body is still working with them. And what starts to happen is your mind is going through the process of trying to get them up and out. And so it's generating all these chemicals, which starts a cortisol release. And what causes stress is unprocessed emotion.
And so the toxic positivity is just as dangerous because it forces us, we refuse to face or process the thing. Instead of metabolizing, get it out, we keep swallowing it, essentially.
Because it also blocks us from asking. Remember, I said you don't have to ask a special way, but you do have to ask.
There's asking for what we want and being okay with it, and asking the way it makes sense for us, and being aware of and okay with wanting more from and in our lives. But the other part, perhaps the most important part, is the receiving part. And you created the receiving method and the receiving school because you're saying we actually have to be taught, or rather retaught, how to receive, because we can ask all day. But if we don't allow ourselves to receive what we ask for, there's the block.
When we ask and it doesn't show up, sometimes it's because the universe has said no or not yet. But a lot of times what happens is the universe delivers it and it's sitting right outside your door, but you need to be able to open the door. And what we're often taught is, oh, if it didn't show up yet, you didn't visualize hard enough, you didn't do X, Y, and Z. That's all the asking side of this. But the reality is, once you ask in any form, the universe, for the most part, is delivering it to you. But if you don't feel safe to receive, and we are taught from a young age that receiving is bad and giving is good. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't start to understand how to receive, and you don't unlearn this disproportionate balance of giving and receiving, then you'll never be able to open the door and let in all the gifts. This is the through line we've been taught as young kids. If you were a small kid and you shared your toy with someone else, they'd be like, yay! But if you went and asked a kid, especially if you were a little robust in the way you asked, and went and took something, not nice. Or if you ask nicely and someone just doesn't give it to you, it's better to give than to receive. And so really making space for magic at the end of the day is understanding the reason things haven't shown up that you want it are not because you're doing all that other crap wrong. It's simply because underneath it, you do not feel like it's okay to receive. And then the receiving method is really about allowing yourself to relearn that skill.
Well, receiving energy makes me think too of the yin and yang, right? Yang is that forward moving energy that moves outward. It's sort of a masculine energy, where yin is the receiving energy. And our culture, which is man-made culture and is all about go out and get it and be a boss, even be a hashtag girl boss, go make it happen. The idea of waiting or being in receiving mode feels passive, that we're not doing enough in our Protestant work ethic culture. That doesn't fly. If you don't make room for it, there will not be what you want in your life, period.
There's so much you can do through human effort, but then there's this gap. And there's the actual result, and the space that fills that gap is magic, right? Well, if you keep going like this and trying to come into this space, you actually don't allow the magic to come in. But most of my clients, when they've been working really hard and things aren't working out the way they want them to, their first homework assignment is 2 weeks vacation. And if I was to say, and I don't mean go away, I mean stop working for 2 weeks. For the people listening, if we surveyed them right now, the majority can't remember the last time they took 2 full weeks off of email, like of all communication that isn't pleasurable, not doing. And that is the answer. That is a big answer.
We wonder why we're not getting what we want. And yet we do not make space for it. We fill every inch of our lives with stuff, with attention, with urgency, with other people's needs. And the magic there is truly allowing for there to be space for it to happen. But what you're really asking people to do is trust and give up a little control, to let go. And that might be the hardest ask of all.
Feels like giving up. It also, when it's truly embraced, creates terror. You became good at being controlled, at controlling things, at perfecting things, because early in life, that's how you made yourself safe. Because something in your early childhood, that's me, that's my story. My parents were wonderful people, but they were highly distracted and they dropped balls. And so I learned really quickly, if I want to make sure something got done, I did it myself. And so when you start to let go of control, yes, it requires trust, but it also raises up all those early childhood wounds. And that really requires you being willing to breathe through the difficulty.
Well, space for a lot of people does not equal security. But until we allow that space, then we certainly can't possibly expect magic to happen. Patty, thank you so much. This is fantastic. The book is Make Space for Magic, Learn to Receive Love, Abundance, and Support from the Universe by Patty Lennon.